All right. Well, good morning, everybody.
Morning.
Morning. I've already asked a few of you if this is your first time at a DrupalCorn. Anybody that just showed? We got a couple more. All right. You're going to have a lot of information over the next couple days. Have fun with it, though. Don't let it abuse you. Plus, there's plenty of time to have fun. In any case, my name is Tony Dillon-Hansen, and I'm a Java developer and Drupal developer for IPERS. That's Iowa Public Employee Retirement Systems. Anybody who works for the state knows who IPERS is, or some of the other public entities. I have been involved with Agile as part of a couple different organizations in my career, and we are starting to implement Agile over at IPERS as well. And so I wanted to share with people who are considering going to Agile or doing stuff with Agile some of the brief experiences that we've had, pitfalls that we've run into, so that if in your planning you can start to look ahead towards some of those ideas. This is my Twitter handle, IowaTiger08, 08, and then my website is tigersanddragons.com. And there's more contact information listed here. On the right, over here is a Kanban board, which literally means a signboard in Japanese. And it essentially does, what does it do? It visualizes your queue and where everything is in a process. And for the purposes of demonstration, I put slide 11 over here that needs attention because I needed to make sure that the Wi-Fi worked and the sound worked. Otherwise, you would have saw a big black screen. So now that we know that that's working, I can put it back into do. But I am going to use this as we go through to demonstrate what we've done so far. If you really want me to test, or somebody wants to test it, you're welcome to. That's what the evaluation is for, and so I'll leave that at the end so you guys can. But this is a demonstration. On the Kanban boards, what you can do is have different colors representing either priority, projects, the level of tasks that you want, or people, if you want to assign it to a specific people or set of people. For the purpose of this, there's no regiment to my colors. I just wanted to show that you could do that. I've seen people do actual different colors altogether. So in any case, we'll move on. A problem, a project. You have a pile of Legos. What are you going to do with it? A host of things. What is your... you got designers coming up to you. You got a business coming up to you and saying, I want this, I want this, I want this. What are you going to do? What are your tools? What is available to you? Why do traditional approaches fail or fall short of some of their goals? Most distinctively, things change, and at random moments. I forgot to move. Things change. Things are hidden. You don't see them. You're not aware of things. Requirements aren't always fully vetted out before you start your project. Users don't a lot of times know what they want. You have requirements that are going to change during the construction process. As you start building things, you're going to realize, oh, we have a limitation here, or we have considerations, security, it can be a big situation. You have new tools and technologies that could make strategies a little bit unpredictable. And priorities are always impacted by organizations trying to accomplish everything in the triangle of work. That is scope, schedule, and cost. Okay? What is Agile? Agile is a methodology, but it is very much a mindset shift. What do you see there? Is this a pile of rocks? Is it a face? Is it dirt? Is it just an image? Who cares? Agile is rooted in the Daiichi Ono Toyota process, and it quickly found favor among technology firms around the world. It has its own manifesto, and it has its own discipline. Traditional approaches have a discipline. Agile has a change of that discipline, but everything centers around that manifesto. What Agile really attempts to do and proposes is at the core to solving all of your project overruns is to get everybody that's involved on the same page as soon as possible and as often as possible. That means you have to open up your communications, you have to start collaborations, and you have to focus upon mutually agreed priorities. And this is what our keynote, she mentioned quick wins. You can consider that as part of your focus. I mentioned a moment ago about the triangle of work. Traditional iron triangle has cost, scope, and schedule. Agile takes all of those and says those are constraints and puts them in one corner. And quality is another constraint. And extrinsic quality value is another point. What Agile and even the iron triangle, traditional-wise, all have the fundamental flaw of 2 out of 3 ain't bad. 3, it's not possible. Or 3 out of 3 is not possible. If you want to reduce your costs, you're going to be sitting here doing something else, taking some other bucket. And that's the idea behind that. Agile terms, I've already mentioned one of them, Kanban, and we're working with this idea here as a demonstration. It's a methodology for planning work, delivering value that promotes collaboration, iterative development, and continuous improvement. A sprint is a time-boxed work interval, usually between 1 to 4 weeks. We found optimal 2 weeks. Backlog is a list of all work that could be done in order by priority. And retrospective is a meeting that is held at the end of the sprint. So if we were to do a sprint, this you can almost consider right at the moment we're doing a sprint right now. I'm trying to do this in 1 hour set. But over a course of 2 weeks, this stuff in your sprint backlog, the to-do column, would be everything that you want to get done in that 2 weeks. You are committed to that. That is, and anything in addition to that, outside of the sprint, is actually called the backlog. So if you have additional questions. You have additional requirements. You have additional material that needs to be done. That's in your backlog. But the sprint backlog is the to-do column. And then your sprint is going to be, you're going to try to get as much of this, if not preferably all of this, over the done. And at the end of the sprint, you have a meeting, and you sit down and talk with each other. What went right? What went wrong? How can we improve what we did? You'll find out a lot about your team in those meetings. And again, Agile is a process. There's sprint planning at the beginning for the purposes of this exercise. I did the planning prior to being here, and I set up what we were going to do, and I set up the priority of how I want it to be presented. Ultimately, when you're doing Agile, the whole team is collaborating. We're sitting here together, and we're deciding, well, I need that one before I need that one. I need that one before I need that one. This is a higher priority. Or this one doesn't need to be done now. Maybe we should get something out of the backlog and you do that instead. And then on each day is what they call a scrum meeting or stand-up, where your whole team is going to get together and look at this board and see what's in progress. Do you have anything that needs attention? Do you have something that's been sitting in progress that needs to move? Why is it sitting in progress for a whole week when maybe it was supposed to only take a day? And then is there any bottlenecks? Okay.
Moving target.
And at the end, again, we talked about adapting and improving through the use of the retrospectives. And you don't go into a retrospective just to find out who's got the best bitches. You go in there to find out how can we improve, so that we don't keep doing cycle and keep redoing mistakes. How can we get out of those ruts? The manifesto for Agile software development. Individuals and interactions over processes and tools. Working software over comprehensive documentation. Customer collaboration over contract negotiation. Responding to change over following the plan. That is, while there's value in the items on the right, we value the items on the left more in Agile. We're going to walk through each one of those points. Individuals and interaction over processes and tools. The number one reason why Agile can be hard is that it can be hard to communicate. Language, there are barriers, there are differing levels of communication, personalities. Organizations, however, that are accustomed to silos of work and non-talking teammates, I can guarantee you would be most impacted by switching to Agile. Because it's an organizational shift that forces people to talk. And people have to be empowered to speak. If you have a manager that doesn't want to hear opinions, Agile is going to be a problem or be difficult. working software over comprehensive documentation.
Chet Wrong here with the wrong way to do Agile. Today, requirements. You should write specifications for all development projects. The more detail, the better. Start with a marketing requirements document and a product requirements document. Maybe throw in a design document too. Now you are finally ready to start writing your stories. And remember, if your story doesn't fit on a single card, then it is too short. So keep writing. Don't be afraid to add an amendment if needed. And once everything is written down, then there is no confusion.
It says in 8.1.2.5.17 of the PRD that it's supposed to have a hover state.
How did I miss that?
And most importantly, don't start coding until everyone has signed off on the specifications. And that's the wrong way to do requirements.
My coworker Ashley found that, because she's the one that gets the task to write documents, and she's like, why am I writing so many bits of documents that just collect dust? Why can't I just tell you what to do? Customer collaborations over contract negotiations. This is quite important, actually. Agile, again, wants everybody on the same page. Who's the customer of your project? Who's your stakeholders? And this also goes back to our keynote speaker. She said, you have to get your stakeholders in on the project. They matter because they are the reason why you're doing something. What is to make this effective for your customer? What is your project is doing something, you want to make it effective for them. It's not about what you want, it's what they need to have done. You build the trust and relationship to get this done. And essentially, what do you really need to do? Always be looking for your opportunity costs and evaluating them. Responding to change over a plan. Agile doesn't mean that we reject planning. I just mentioned before, you do sprint planning, you do scrum meetings, you're doing daily stand-ups, and then you're doing retros to find out. You also can do, a lot of teams will do what they call release planning. So I want to figure out what I want to do in this next 3 months, and what work needs to be achieved in that 3 months to have in your release. What do you want in that release? Bi-weekly sprint plannings and retros. What happens if the customer changes what they want? Be adaptive, not a static plan. That's why you have sprint plannings on a 2-week basis. If something changes, you can change. You can respond to the change. A lot easier if you're meeting on a regular basis than if you meet and then forget about until he's trying to deliver something. So that an Agile, in fact, expects that the plan is going to change. And again, being in constant conversation and collaboration, you're going to be able to respond to the change, know about the change of request a lot sooner than if you waited 2 months in the requirements phase or however you want to do it. And again, all work is planned and prioritized in an Agile project. I just mentioned a while ago, what do you really need to get done? I need this function to work. Otherwise, nothing else in this application doesn't It doesn't work right. So we need this done first. Anything else can be secondary to it. And so, with the idea of planning, if you don't know where you're going, you'll end up someplace else. You'll be buried. What does this mean for your team? If you're planning to transition to Agile from a different environment, you're going to uncover all sorts of skeletons and dirt under the rug that's been swept there for years and years and years, maybe even decades. Because traditional approaches are tradition. People want to do things the way they've always done it, whether they're good, bad, or ugly. And you're going to find all sorts of stuff underneath that rug. You just have to be ready for it. Some of it you won't. You can probably look at your organization right now and see some of it if you thought about it. But when you start visualizing and verbalizing it, it becomes much more apparent what's under the rug. Teams still need direction and guidance. So again, if you uncover that rug, you got to plan how to deal with it. You know, if somebody doesn't want to visualize their work, they don't want to talk about what they're doing. If the team, you have testers that want to do something, test other items, and you have developers that want to go and start writing new functionality. Well, why did you write the new functionality when it was never requested? Collective efforts will, however, generate much more productivity when everyone can see all that is being done as part of the team effort. If you got everybody working on this and you see things moving this way, you start finding ownership as a team in watching the work get done and wanting that work to get done. And then you'll see how much effort people pay into the goal. Okay? You know, Mark was working really hard on getting that security service working, and it took him 3 days. And once we did that, we were able to move. For PMs and organizers, the most important thing to do is to learn effective grassroots organizing and planning, because now you're kind of shifting some of the burden of leadership out to the team. Select and prioritize. Let the team do some of this work. It's not just top down. So for PMs, they have to get used to getting very collaborative team efforts. Conversely, like I said, you will find out who's putting a lot of work into it, especially when you're doing something like this, and if you start doing when you do metrics and estimations, you may see somebody slipping. Well, why are they slipping? They may not necessarily be avoiding work. They may just be having a difficult time with something. How can we pair them up with somebody who can bring them up to speed? Bring them as part of the team. What is the impediment? How can we handle the impediment as a team? Well, your system went down. Why did it go down? Somebody deployed a piece of code, electrical outage last night. Could be anything. Or you have a business person coming over to your developer every 2 hours asking for a new item that was never in the original plan. One thing to mention, though, is individual subversion methods are poison and will ultimately hurt the team performance and morale. Agile is very much a team effort, and if you have somebody there that's trying to subvert it, you can kill team morale in a hurry. For PMs and teams, you need to address that like very quickly. Otherwise, and that's actually not just an Agile situation. You're talking about traditional approaches too. If you have a team member who's just subversion, it's a problem. It could be a big problem. But you are going to do track analytics to justify your priority work. And again, that's how you get around impediments. Apple used this nice little logo a few moons ago. What Agile does, again, I'm going back to the mind shift and organizational shift idea. You're going to want to peer review. You're going to test everything. Many organizations that are doing development switch to test-driven development, which is an offshoot of Agile, where you write your test before you write your any line of actual code. Peer review. I want you to review my work. Let's see, how can we make this better? Those kinds of things will help the quality rise, and it'll help distribute knowledge among the team so that Joe isn't the only person in the office who knows how to work with Jasper reports, and Susan isn't the only person in the office who knows how to do theming, and so on and so on. If you can get people to collaborate as developers and as testers, you'll find the whole team will rise together. And for us, part of the visualization is not just the Kanban board, but you diagram everything out. You're writing out things and doing workflows, having those discussions. So it's like when when the tester is sitting there, I need to see this, 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 this. And then you take that and you put it in one of these stories, or you start separating it out into the stories. You know, I need to build a persona for Warner Brothers as a test employer. And then I need another story to build out Bugs Bunny, or Emma Webster, or Elmer Fudd. Okay? Now I need that person to be able to enroll. And then I need to see what happens if we attach a beneficiary to that person. Those are individual and deliverable components. And the tools can help. We found not only the whiteboards, you will find that whiteboards can be very, very useful to your teams if you're going to Agile. Kanban boards, or we're using Jira now to help manage our sprints and our work, and you get to see where everything is at. So you have research, and then you have actual work. Those are separate components. Those are separate tasks, and they have deliverables attached to each one. And the tool, you can, we're recording how long we were expecting this to work, or how much time that we were thinking that this was going to happen. 1 day, 2 hours, and who's currently working on it. But the tools are only so much there. You have to decide to use it. I will say that once we switched to using Jira away from our old CQ ClearQuest system, all of a sudden our team just had a huge started just amazingly much more collaborative, because they could see the workflow. They could see where things were moving and where it was at in the process. And I'm a Royals fan, so yay last year, and hopefully this year we're continuing. But they didn't get there because Alex Gordon. They got there as a team. They didn't get there because of one hit and one stolen base. They got there because there were many of them, and they worked together. Agile almost requires you to get your team to work together and to commit. So I committed to getting all of these tasks done before the hour was done. The team would commit to making sure all that stuff that was in the to-do for the sprint is in the done column at the end of the sprint. And that's where your retros get into. If you miss that, why did you miss it? And there's your Legos. Your project. You saw a pile of Legos and you didn't know what to do. You went out and talked to your customers, you talked to your stakeholders, you figured out what you needed to do, what you wanted to do, what you could do, and you built a series of ships. And that's what Agile can do for you, is give you those results. Now it's Q&A. I'll take questions.
Do you have a particular number of projects that this ceases to work for? I only ask because we used to use a more well-defined Agile process, and then we realized we became too large. We had too many open projects to actually make it work. So I didn't know if you had tips for adapting that, or if there is kind of a limit on how much you have to do where it becomes not as effective.
Agile is most effective with smaller teams.
What's the team size? 4 to 5?
No more than 8. Testers and developers and analysts. So if you're realizing nationwide, actually they go up to 20 and 22 in for a particular project, but that team is working on just one project and they're trying to get something out. I've worked on several organizations where you have multiple project tracks going on at the same time, and then those have competing priorities against each other. So what's this project does can impact this one. There's no magical answer to how big or how many. If you're overtaxing your workers and you keep running into needs attention or bottlenecks, pull back. Look at your stories. How are you designing your stories? Are they deliverables? Are they constantly being impeded by some other blocker that wasn't thought of before we even started the original story? But the team size itself, between 4 and 8 is the general principle that they want to recommend. And even Agile Iowa has been recommending that.
He keeps saying stories. What exactly is a story?
A story, yes. In terms of what we have here, each one of these was a story. A story is going to be a set of requirements and acceptance criteria and the actions that were taken to get from requirements to acceptance criteria, fulfilling the criteria. And each story can be part of a broader epic, which that epic can span across different projects. So I have one project over here that's security. I have one project that's over here that's just reports. I have one project that's over here that does warehousing. And I can have an epic that says I need to produce a report about historical something in our data, pensioners in our system. I would have a story in the reports. I'd have stories. I'd have stories that define work in the warehouse. I'd have stories that define work in I can't remember what the other one was, but the stories are basically a unit of work that has a deliverable at the end. So if I can't produce some sort of deliverable on this, I can't work it, because I need to be able to get something to somebody to review and to finalize. Does that help? Any other questions?
The process is real fluid, and a lot of times when you're applying this with stakeholders or sometimes even team members, you're finding new stuff. There's a big challenge in that with scope creep then. What have you looked at as far as keeping scope contained so that your cost doesn't go crazy?
Scope creep is a fun one. Very, very fun. First thing is there's another meeting in front of the retrospective. You should always be like when I worked with Telegen and Source Allies, we would always do a structured walkthrough demo to show how the progress of what's coming up. And a lot of times when you go and show your customer or your stakeholder, this is where we're at, they start, oh, why don't we do this, and why don't we do that, and why don't we do this? Well, in terms of the sprint, we want to stay focused to this. And if you need to, absolutely need to, you can swap out a more critical issue that needs to be taken care of. So let's just say number 9 needed that I had a more critical issue that needed to come in. I can take 9 out, put it in the backlog, and then bring in whatever critical issue is. That's one thing, because that helps you stay responsive to your organization and responsive to the business. Because if the business needs something, they sometimes aren't going to wait 2 and 4 weeks to have something done. However, you get to the point of the question is it what you need in the release? And you go back to your business and say, we all committed to getting this set of stuff done and this set of functionality done. If you want this new bell and whistle, what are we taking out of this? And when you bring it to the customer like that, or the stakeholder, then they see the trade-off. Okay. Again, if you have that triangle where you have your costs and your scope and whatnot, and if that scope starts rising, everything else has to diminish. So again, you work with your stakeholders, sit down, have the conversation. Hey, what you're asking for, turns out that's a whole nother 2 weeks worth of work. Is that really what you need? And that's, again, that's in the spirit of collaboration and the open communication. You're not saying no, because as soon as you say no, they're gonna go find somebody else to do it, and then you got projects that just go nuts. But at least efficient the idea, hey, we can get this done, but what else don't? What are we trading? Any other questions?
You mentioned some pitfalls or some other things at the beginning. Have you run into some static, or what are the things that we might run into and be needing to address?
Yes. As I mentioned, I kind of perused over it with the rug. When you start going into Agile, you're starting to ask people to do analytics. You're starting to ask people to visualize their work, and like in Jira, now they're time boxed. In a way, we don't now. In some mature Agile teams are like, that's a goal. I want to go after that I want to try to get this done in 2 hours. But to somebody who has never seen a time box like that, they think that you're sitting there with a stopwatch and trying to clock them down, and it's like, oh my God. And I'm saying, no. Just get it done, and move on. The other thing is mature Agile teams. Let's go back to this Jira slide. Mature Agile teams only want one story in progress per developer at a time. Nothing else, nothing more. So if somebody comes to and says, I need something much more critical right now, I have to stop work, pop it over here and create the new story and start working on that. And that has been a challenge for some people too, because they're used to working on, well, I started on this presentation for a couple hours, and then they decided to switch over to a data script fix, and then they decided to switch over to some other thing. And what happens with that is that these don't become accurate measures. Now you're doing one day and a half, maybe, but you've been doing 4 and 5 tasks at the same time. Agile really, for developers, really wants the developers to focus on this, get this done, and move it over, then bring something else in. And that has been one challenge you get. Again, it's a mindset shift. People who are not used to working on this and getting it done won't be used to that.
So then I guess a better approach for the Agile team leader to do is to be able to defend his crew and say, no, you're not hijacking my guys, right? Or does it have to happen? You work on that next. Don't tell my guy what to do. Right? Right?
You definitely do want that point of facilitation, issue facilitation. So you get somebody coming over and saying, this is absolutely critical. I need this done, and I need this done. And wait, she was working on something that needs to be done like 2 days ago, and now you're asking this needs to be done now. The point preference would be is to facilitate that through a Scrum Master or your project manager. To say, let's bring those critical issues to me, and then we can put it on the board and decide if this is actually critical or not. You know, everybody's emergency is their champion issue, but you also have your champion issue is competing with everybody else's. So I would agree that the definite help with that is to have a point person, and that's called the Scrum Master and a product owner. There are a whole bunch of terms that I didn't go over because I could like bludgeon you with a whole bunch of glossary. I would recommend for people, Agile Iowa is a great resource, especially if you're around Des Moines. They have meetings on a regular basis that talk about Agile. Another one is Agile in a Flash, and it's just a series of cards that explain more about Agile in bulleted points, whatnot. You can actually find this as a PDF all over the internet. But if you want to grace these guys with your contribution, they would be great, then you would buy it. I did, and I'll refer to it every now and then once when we go through. Here's also it's right there. A Scrum reference card, and this is actually from scrumreferencecard.com, and it'll give you some other more nice pointers about how to write a story, how to write an epic, and how to organize your teams. Agile really wants you to be a self-organizing team, and when I talked earlier about silos and we want to get rid of those silos of work. The thing is the old and traditional styles all want to assign things to people because that's their gravy. That's what they know how to do. Agile wants the whole team to be able to do everything, and so anything that's sitting in here, anybody in the team should be able to pick it and do it and work it. Maybe with a little encouragement, maybe with you're still going to have people who are very good with databases. You're still going to have people that are very good with GUI and testing and whatnot. But your team should be able to just grab stuff so it doesn't sit and fester. Anything else?
We have another 15 minutes.
Yeah, we got about 10.
How long does it take to convince an organization to get, or how do you even start? As a lone developer who has read some of these books or is very anxious to try something like this in an older organization, it's 100 years old, that does not do a lot of technical work, how do you even begin to pitch this idea? I mean, I pitched Git to them with the deployment process, and they shut me down. So how do you, and I just vaporize, because, how do you, like, why would you not, anyway, but how do we convince? How do we convince entrenched people who desperately need help?
That is a very good question.
That's a doozy. Maybe it's a conversation instead. I'm not trying to put you on the spot.
No, it's a very good question, and it's worth an investigation. When I came to IPERS, they didn't really have what I would call an SDLC price, any sort of life cycle process.
Okay.
And I sat there and I said, well, we've got to implement a control mechanism in the development, and I was watching things just kind of meander around, and requirements were sort of over here, and testing was sort of over here, and you had your developers that were very siloed in. This one didn't know what this one was doing, and this one didn't know what this one was doing. And I said, let's put everybody up on board. And before we even had Jira, I started us on the Kanban board. And because you don't have to do Scrum, you can do Kanban, but the idea is now if you do just Kanban, you're no longer time boxed, but you are still wanting to watch your iteration of and workflow. And you can start with that, because once you do that, you can show some people what the visualization does. And you don't, and if you don't want to use a whole bunch of markers and paper, post-it notes, Trello is great. I use it for my home, some of my home projects, and I'm sitting there, what my garden I was building in this this summer. I was like, okay, plant seed, plant, build, get the rock, get the brick, and I was moving things over as I was doing it. And you could showcase something like that to, especially a manager. You can get them to buy into it. Showcase it to some of your colleagues. You're going to get some people kind of, really? Oh, that's kind of neat. Why don't we do that? Because once everybody starts seeing the visual of progress instead of, what are we doing?
Can I share how I got started in our organization? So, well, the three of us were electrical design, and we used to be rather small. So it worked for us when we were like 10, 15 people, but now we're at 30 and it just doesn't work anymore. But one of our developers decided that he wanted to try to bring this to our company. So he did it himself for about 6 months, and he tracked how it influenced his progress and how it influenced how successful he was and how much more profitable he was as an employee for our company. And so then he took that information and presented it to our owner, who was floored by the amount of progress that it had made in his individual work style. So he immediately implemented it across the entire company. So it's really just being able to show that it's a profitable change to make, and usually when management can see that it's going to make you more money, they're all
Right, of course.
Yeah, how do you deal with team members who don't want to speak? We've been doing Scrum for about a year, and our lectures are 5 minutes because nobody is willing to open their mouth and say anything.
Why? I would ask that question, are we scared? You need to be able to walk into a retro and be able to talk about what's been happening. And it's not personal. Don't ever get personal with it, because if you start going that direction, nobody wants to participate. But say, hey, I saw Ashley. She did a really good job with that write-up, and that was a really good win. Pick the wins, get the wins, and then you'll start seeing the conversations start evolving and getting growing. I really didn't like the way we handled X. Just throw it out there, but number one thing has to be safety. If somebody's coming in there and saying, and recording that information and going to turn around, you get a manager who wants to then turn around and use that against people, that's not a good idea. That's not what the retro is about. It's about trying to, if you found out something's not good, how do we change that to make it better? How can we improve? Don't just sit there and keep bitching. Get something improve. Do something to improve. So, but it's, I would go back to, if I like what she said about what they did, because that's kind of what I did with my first two. Is I just sit there and I started time boxing and showing the flow, and oh man, I had people not excited about this at all. But when they started seeing the work being done and they started seeing the costs, savings that were happening because we weren't spending money sending it over to a vendor anymore, we were just taking care of it. Why do you have to send this over there? We can take care of that. And it only take you 2 hours to do it. You know, that kind of information becomes valuable. And that's where, like I said, you're going to start wanting to know some of your metrics. Keep track of your metrics.
I use Trello at work, and I've done it that way too. Started it by myself, and I've used it for a year. Olinda, actually, City of Olinda, a friend of mine, recommended it, and then another developer is going to, a program actually is going to start using it. I love it, and it's free. It's free. So, I definitely suggest starting off with that.
Asana is another really good tool.
Yeah, we've been my old boss and I started using Asana for the team. We're still kind of, I mean, I just use it to keep track of notes, so I don't forget anything, you know. But as far as adaption for larger organizations, are nice.
Actually, this is done. You know, we're renovating a house and we're trying to go and fix things up, and so we just put them right there. And you don't have to get to the nth degree of, you know, how long it's going to take you to do it, but just so that you can recognize what needs to be done.
And it does have due dates on it. I mean, if you really get into it, you can add a due date to it. You can add different people to it. You can add a checklist to it. So I've been using it more detail than I did when I first got it. So so it notifies you when something's up and stuff like that. So for me, it's been a great organizational tool.
And this isn't really a good story per se, but this just kind of gives you an idea of, all I want for this story is to seed yard for grass. The description would be kind of redundant because that's what I wanted to do. But I would assume that I've already purchased the seed and that I have some sort of delivery mechanism. But I'm going to seed the yard for grass. That's the only thing I'm going to do in this. Once that's done, this is over and done. There's nothing more. Now, if I have to purchase the seed, I would create the card for that to do the procurement.
It should be small tasks instead of.
The smaller you get them, the more deliverable you have.
Okay.
The larger they are, the more scope creep has a chance to come in, and as well you get deliverables that are ill-defined. If you keep it small and concise, you can deliver something, research or otherwise, procurement, development, testing, test cases, proposal. Any of those things are deliverables, and you can mark them as your acceptance criteria. "30 seconds. And you guys have been wonderful. I want to thank you so very much for entertaining with me. I hope I gave you useful information. My information, like this, I'll bring it back here. Thank you again. And please fill out the session reviews. I look forward to improving my work.
Thanks.
Thank you very much.